Good morning, USA. Welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Our job today is to help my friend Matt. He asked me a question. He sent me a video. He said, Kit, help me make sense of this. Is it true, accurate? I'm fairly apolitical, so I value your opinion. Thanks, Matt. All right, this is what we're going to help Matt with. First, I'm going to show you a little bit of the smarmy fellow who is in this video. He calls it Free Stuff 2020. And he went through the debates and he tallied everybody's, he tried to. The point he's making is that all the programs, all the plans add up to a lot of money. I'll just give you a little taste of him here.
He at least proposes less than Harris.
You ought to be able to refinance your student debt.
He also wants the feds to give teachers more money. Assuming his plans like Harris's, that's a total of $87 billion.
We can make it work for everyone.
Elizabeth Warren would spend much more.
You'll be debt-free.
Some students will be, that is, but you'll be deeper in debt if Warren gets her way.
He makes that statement so blithely. He's actually lying, and I think he knows it, but we'll get to that. If you look right under my picture here, there's a statement that comes from modern monetary theory. So this is Matt's end answer. If he's willing to take the time to understand modern monetary theory, he'll understand why this guy is blowing smoke up everybody's asses. But we'll keep going a little bit longer. He'll get to President Trump here.
Idea claims it'll cost $500 billion a year.
New science and technology.
Biden would spend less, but still a lot.
I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations.
Some candidates would spend almost as much. Senator Sanders wants to increase food stamps, expand Social Security benefits, and guarantee giving up the Democrats' plans. But the incumbent hasn't been very responsible either.
A $21 billion increase in defense spending.
Since Trump became president, spending rose about $500 billion.
Okay. Now, the biggest lie of all, he says at the end that the biggest losers are you, the taxpayer. Even though all the things he describes right before he says that are things that would help everyone and improve everyone's lives. But the real issue is, how are you going to pay for that? And that question is either going to make us or break us. And the problem is that it takes a while and we don't have much time. We are busy with other things. We're playing games on our phone or trying to get our kids to their violin lessons. That would be awesome. But in our busy lives, we don't pay attention to the elections until right before they happen. And in this case, it's going to kill us because we have to understand how the economy works. So we'll do this in small pieces. I won't try to solve Matt's problem completely in one day. But modern monetary theory says, as the sole manufacturer of dollars whose debt is denominated in dollars, the U.S. government can never become insolvent, unable to pay its bills. But the biggest thing to know is that taxes at the federal level don't actually pay for things. And this is the hardest thing to understand. We've been taught to think that a U.S. federal budget is the same as our own family budgets. And that if you spend too much, you run out of money. And that isn't true. The video I'm going to show you next is a rapid fire video. And the only thing he doesn't know how to say fiat, but what he's saying is that currency, fiat currency, is what sovereign states like the United States and the United Kingdom have, and that's why it's different than our household debt. But this kid is brilliant, and he gets things sorted out right away. And so we're just gonna jump to him modern monetary theory and have another slurp of coffee, put on your seatbelt, pay attention, and you'll understand a lot more about why this other video is just misinformation.
MMT has been getting a lot of attention lately, but most people criticizing it have no idea what the hell it is. MMT is not money printing or a brand new system or a political prescription of policies. It's a description of how the system as it is already works. And the main insight is that a government with its own fiat currency and floating exchange rates doesn't have to worry about defaulting on currency denominated in its own debt. This is a fact. Government debt isn't like household debt. All this scaremongering over the debt is purely emotional and a relic of the gold standard era. The government doesn't have a funding problem. Where do you think it gets the money in the first place? It spends the money into the economy first, and then it collects it back via taxes and borrowing. Now, of course, the controversy surrounds the extent to which deficit spending is inflationary, but inflation is caused by spending that exceeds production capacity. That's why you have countries like Japan with over twice the debt to GDP ratio as the US flirting with deflation, while you have countries like Turkey with a third of the debt to GDP ratio with double-digit inflation. Here's an analogy. Imagine you have a grocery store with 100 unsold oranges. If I buy 10 more oranges, that doesn't drive up the price of oranges, but if I try to buy 200 oranges, well, then there's a shortage driving up the price. Another example is if you want to hire an engineer and all engineers are currently employed, well, then you have to pay them more, driving up the wages, which is inflationary. Now, the Federal Reserve and economists use full employment as a proxy for an economy at productive capacity, and full employment is defined as being at 4.5%. Right now, we're at 4%. We're not even close to at productive capacity. Unemployment rate doesn't factor in part-time workers, underemployed workers, your college graduate who couldn't get a job in their major, so they're working at Starbucks, disparaged workers, people who outright leave the labor force, like me. So to suggest we're at full production capacity is complete nonsense. If you want to see an economy at capacity, go back to World War II. Government surpluses are held up like some kind of holy grail. But the last 7 times we've run surpluses.
Let me just stop there for a second about full employment. He's right. There isn't anything like full employment. And the government keeps employment from being full employment on purpose. It's a horrendously cruel strategy. And if you want to understand about fiscal policy, this book, Dean Baker, Rigged, it's free. It's a PDF file that you can just link to. I'll put the link underneath this video. He says, there's been an enormous upward redistribution of income in the United States in the last 4 decades. In his most recent book, Baker shows that this upward redistribution was not the result of globalization and the natural workings of the market. He says also there are no natural workings of the market. The market is a creation of humans, sort of like climate change. Rather, it was the result of conscious policies that were designed to put downward pressure on the wages of ordinary workers while protecting and enhancing the incomes of those at the top. So when people say, how are you going to pay for it? They have an agenda. They're trying to get austerity to happen. They're trying to get people to tighten their own pockets. Why? Because they want to put all the money from our productivity into the pockets of the wealthy. So if we had full employment where everybody is working as much as they wanted to, it would be much easier to keep the income down into the places where people can actually spend it. When you have people at the bottom of the economic pile spending, it stimulates the economy a lot more. Rich people can only spend so much. So when the income goes up, the economy gets stagnant because there aren't enough rich people, no matter how much they buy, to really stimulate the economy the way it would work if middle and lower income people had the money. That stimulates the economy a lot more. So we're in a vicious circle. The higher, the more of the money that rises to the top, the more stagnant the economy becomes. So back to the kid.
The first 6 have directly preceded depressions, and the last one run by Clinton in the 90s preceded the recession of 2000. This is because a government surplus is a private sector deficit, meaning that money is drained from the private sector. This is contractionary. On the other hand, a government deficit is a private sector surplus, meaning money is injected into the private economy.
So a surplus for the government is less money for people. A deficit for the government is more money for people. Nobody ever teaches us this.
Private sector has a net desire to save. Due to the paradox of thrift, this is contractionary. Government deficit spending injects money back into the economy to compensate for this, while also offering a sort of savings account for them to park their money. Treasury bonds are effectively almost identical to a savings account. Now, none of this is to say that we can just recklessly deficit spend. The point is that inflation is the constraint, and what you spend the money on matters. If there's a lot of excess capacity in the economy, a lot of unemployed people, unsold inventory, idle factories, then we can get away with a lot more deficit spending, whether that be on investment or consumption, and not necessarily cause inflation. Of course, there are other implications. If we print too much money, then the currency would depreciate. So if we're relying on imports, that could harm us in certain ways. But in and of itself, deficit spending isn't necessarily a bad thing, and we are nowhere close to being at full production capacity. Politicians spend so much time bickering over the debt and the deficit and how are we going to pay for it. These questions, they don't matter. They don't even follow them anyways. The Republican Party, who pretends to care more, deficits always balloon under the Republican Party, like under Reagan, recent Trump tax cuts. Democrats, of course, aren't really that much better. Anyways, next time somebody tries to scaremonger you over the debt, tell them that the real problem is the fact that we deny people the resources they need, all in the name of the debt. We leave all these resources unutilized, all these unemployed people, because of the debt. And the debt is literally just digits on a computer. It doesn't matter. We're not on a gold standard anymore. Your aversion to it is purely emotional. Get over it.
Get over it. And he's right. Stephanie Kelton has... The public purse is just one. Another one is about myths of the economy. Just get in and watch Stephanie Kelton and you'll understand a lot better. Here's just a little blurb from her discourse, The Public Purse. She was in the United Kingdom when she was giving this one.
Peter. So I think the tide is shifting. So his question, to remind, was my advice disregarded? Because Senator Sanders attempted to pay for everything, right? To be fair, I started working for him in January, and he announced that he was going to run in April or May. So it takes a while to warm up to me. You know, what I said is real. You are bound by the rules of Washington. And imagine how much less serious he would have appeared, I think, had he not attempted to dialogue the way that other candidates dialogue. I will point out, however, that he likes to say this phrase: change doesn't come from the top down. Change comes from where? The bottom up. So what I do is I try very hard to go into communities, to give public talks, to get myself out there in social media and to communicate with regular people, because I think that's the pressure point. I really do believe that our politicians will be more likely to let go of some of that rhetoric when we stop holding their feet to the fire every time they show up for a town hall meeting and we're asking them about the deficit. They think, well, I ought to pay attention to the deficit because all of my constituents are asking me about. So let's stop doing that. Let's make sure that we tell them that we want them to unleash the full force of the public purse to serve our interests, because the Republicans just demonstrated that they have no qualms whatsoever adding to the deficit if it means achieving their goals. And their goals are cutting corporate taxes and giving big tax breaks to the donor class. That's their agenda. They're laser focused, and they're not about to let the deficit stand in their way. They'll run right through the deficit, and they say, oh, it'll pay for itself. Hand wave, hand wave. I'm going there. And Democrats are going, I have to pay for everything. I have to find a way. No, you don't. They just gave you the freedom to now, right, open up. And so there's an interesting senator. His name is Brian Schatz. He's a senator from Hawaii. And he's got legislation out right now for debt-free college. So it's very similar to what Senator Sanders was trying to do with public colleges and universities. And he goes and he sits down for an interview. And they said to him, debt-free college, huh? How are you going to pay for it? And you know what he said? I'm not going to answer that question. He said, it's a trap. It's a trap. He said, the Republicans don't pay for anything. He said, why is it only progressive? Only the progressive agenda has to be paid for. I thought it was brilliant. And what you're seeing is...
It was brilliant. And that's our answer. We have to realize that we can raise the amount of money that we give to the military and we don't have to raise taxes. How is that achieved? And modern monetary theory shows us how it's achieved. It isn't a matter of raising taxes to pay for things. That does have to happen, however, at the local level, with school boards and with counties and city governments. They do have to raise taxes to pay for things, but that's not what happens at the federal level. So we have to keep that all straight. I just jumped because I saw a mouse a second ago running out from under my couch. I wanted to show you the mouse. It was very cute, but it's the first time I've seen a mouse in this house, so I was a little surprised. But I didn't break character until I just jumped right then. All right, so for Matt, that was a pretty good answer. You need to understand that the people who keep sneeringly saying, "How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for that?" They have an agenda. They can pay for anything they want to pay for, but what they don't want to pay for is things that actually benefit we, the people. So, unshaved, unbathed, unedited, unscripted. Matt, I hope you enjoy this, and please make a comment in the comments if you have any questions.